The best sports clips from around the country. Now you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of over there? Because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They say this all the time. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So I read every single comment. So if you think what I'm saying is the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, let me know in the comments below. If you think what I'm saying is the most amazing thing, then definitely please let me know. Either way, let's get into some discussions, let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly special. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel excited to be part of, something that we all really feel connected to, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. So without further ado, let's get to it. We're watching a clip of First Things First, where Chris Broussard, is doing his Bud list, the Bruise Under Duress list. I didn't see it only through the thumbnail. I saw that Doc Rivers is on there, which I wholeheartedly agree with that. So there's not much to say without really knowing what they're going to say. So let's just jump right into it.
We read some viewer mail.
Yeah.
I went to the post office today to get the mail.
Brian and Ryan?
A little light today.
We don't have our mail delivered. We have to go get it from the post
When
office.
it comes in a satchel, you got to go there. They don't deliver satchels.
Okay, got it.
On Christmas. Okay. Dear Wilds, excited for Chiefs-Ravens, the First Things First Bowl. Question, is the First Things First Bowl the game, or is it Monday's show that you're trying to drive viewers towards? Cheers, Ryan and Brian. Ryan and Brian, excellent question. We're not 100% sure. Hubs described the First Things First Bowl as like his wedding. It's kind of like the whole thing. It's the ceremony and the after party. What's wrong?
I'm just waiting.
There's nothing to wait for. Here's our promo for the First Things First Bowl. There are some Easter eggs in here. It's between Brew, who has been rooting for the Ravens the entire time, and and Nick, who's been rooting for the Chiefs. And there I am, of course, not excommunicated. I am still a fan. So that's the First Things First Bowl. Please tune in.
Are you the Easter egg?
And tune in for what it's supposed to be.
I don't think Greg sees it. There you go.
Hey, that's not the part that's inaccurate.
Yeah.
I can deal with the head. Yes, it's the body that everybody's like, that's not Brew. Oh, my goodness. Not Brew. All right, here we go.
It's the dumbest bit on TV.
First time in a while, maybe this season, that there's been a basketball related person on it. And here we go at number 3, Doc Rivers.
Oh, boy.
Doc, everybody loves you. Everybody loves Doc, so much so that the Milwaukee Bucks just turned their team over to him to win the NBA championship in a championship or bust season.
L-Bob.
Right? LeBron, absolutely. All right, even though, Doc, you haven't been past the second round since 2012, or as my radio colleague on the Odd Couple, Rob Parker, would say, since Moby Dick was a guppy. You haven't been past the second round. All right, so Doc, look.
That's pretty
Here
funny.
is a shot at redemption. Because we're all for third chances. Forget second chances. Third chances, all right? After failing in 7 seasons with the Clippers to get them past the second round. After failing in 3 seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers to get them past the second round. Now you have a chance. And I'm telling you, Doc, if you win a championship with this team, even though it is, you got arguably the best player in the world or top 3 in Giannis and Damian Lillard, all-time great, who is hungry. If you deliver them a championship, people will not be talking about the blown 3-1 leads, the blown 3-2 leads, and all of that stuff. You will be redeemed, no question about it. Doc, I'm pulling for you.
I think that's a quick. I'm sure a lot of people here right now are more focused on the NFL, so I'll keep my comments real quick on this one before we start to dive in too much into the NBA as soon as the NFL is unfortunately over. But I agree with Broussard putting this on here. Doc Rivers. A lot of people think that he's overrated. A lot of people think that he underachieved even when he won with the Celtics, that they should have been able to win multiple championships. I think that's a little harder because, unfortunately, they built that big 3 when they were kind of starting to leave their prime. So it was a very short window. Garnett's body was falling apart. Pierce didn't age necessarily the best. And Ray Allen is just a smaller, more shooter-based type person, and it's harder to really rely on that player. They're just not as physically dominant. They can't truly take control over a game as much as, say, like a bigger, stronger person like a LeBron James, for instance. Doc Rivers, again, he was in the Clippers and failed, but he went up against juggernauts like the Golden State Warriors. So you can give him the benefit of the doubt there, I guess, to some degree. And then with the Sixers, he didn't do anything to elevate them. He didn't do anything to bring them to the next level. They just essentially stayed exactly the same as they were before they had Doc Rivers. So to me, that's kind of interesting because, and when you watched, especially Sixers games, there was just nothing unlocked. There was you couldn't see what was Doc Rivers' stamp on the team. And it really makes you question. And there's times that you're like, call a timeout right now, and he wouldn't call a timeout. And timeouts are really important in basketball to disrupt the flow. In fact, I think they get too many timeouts in the NBA because it's annoying. But there was times that like you're just like, why are you not calling a timeout right now? What are you doing? There was a time when he should have taken Joel Embiid out of the game. Joel Embiid gets an elbow to the face in the playoffs and gets a concussion and fractures his orbital bone, which then affected the whole next series because he was concussed and literally had a broken bone in his face, in his eye socket. Let me go see you go play basketball under those circumstances. And it completely ruined the next series and they lost. They had no chance. Embiid was clearly not right. And that's just like, that's Doc Rivers' fault. It's only his fault. No one else in that situation. So yeah, he's definitely under duress because now he's with a new team, a great team, an elite team, a team that's, second right now, I believe, in the East. And you have Giannis Antetokounmpo in his prime and Dame and stuff. And so it's really like, what are you going to do?
All right, at number 2, Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar, you're not facing the pressure you did last week when you hadn't played well in the playoff game. You played great last week, and you were facing a rookie. So if you had lost to him, it would have really looked bad. Now you're facing Patrick Mahomes.
I think it's
you
Purdy.
Guys are favored, but there is no shame in losing to the great Patrick Mahomes. But I don't even think you're motivated by the pressure of the media narrative or your opponents or even your teammates and coaches. I think the only pressure you feel is what you put on yourself. And you have said, you have downplayed being all pro, downplayed winning the division, downplayed winning the MVP, which you probably will. You have said it doesn't matter. All I'm focused on is a Super Bowl. So if you lose this game, I think you're going to have trouble sleeping at night, all right, for the rest of the offseason. So that's the pressure. But Lamar, I do believe in you. All right, at number 1.
So, to interject there, I think it depends on what we mean by pressure for Lamar, as in what are the expectations and what's at stake. When someone is under pressure or under duress, you have to ask yourself, well, why? Because what's at stake? Because if nothing's at stake, right, that's when we talk about teams that are playing with house money, right? The Packers were not under pressure because they were just happy to be there. This is a young, new, fresh team. They're playing with house money. There's no pressure because there's nothing at stake. They can't lose. The fans aren't going to, outside of oblivious fans or fans that are just have too high of expectations, they're not going to be disappointed. If you're a Green Bay Packers fan in that moment, you have to just be like, hey, that was a great run. I'm really excited for the future. And if you're really upset and said, this is a disaster, they suck, what are they doing? Then you're probably confused. So with Lamar Jackson, I guess, I feel as though maybe like if you are a Ravens fan, right, if the Ravens are your number one team, you probably are reaching the point with Lamar where you're like, hey, bro, are you going to win us a Super Bowl? Like what, come on, let's go. Harbaugh, yes, we know you won a Super Bowl, but that may as well been like 30 years ago. We have a whole new generation of kids who were born since then. Like, what are you doing, right? They won in 2013, I think it was, right? It was 2012, 2013, I think the Super Bowl itself was in 2013, if memory serves me correctly. That was 11 years ago. And so it's just like, what are you doing? And now you paid Lamar all this money, and it's like, at the very least, you got to get to the Super Bowl. So I see that pressure there. But I think since Lamar is not famous and talked about a ton, and I've kind of briefly mentioned this before just because of his personality type, which I think is totally fine and cool, is that there's less pressure because people aren't constantly talking about Lamar. We're not talking about Lamar every single week on here. They talk about Purdy and Dak Prescott way more, and it's not even close. Seriously, it's not even close. We can go back and look at all the conversations that we've had over this season, and it's not even close. Way more people are talking about Mahomes, Allen, Purdy, and Dak Prescott, not Lamar, not the MVP. And that's pretty wild. And again, I think it's a combination between it being the Ravens, which are just technically relatively speaking to some of these other teams that I mentioned, they're just less popular necessarily. And it definitely has probably a less broader fan base. I've been kind of all over the country, and I don't really always see a lot of Baltimore fans necessarily. I've seen plenty of 49ers jerseys and Packers jerseys. Eagles travel very well. Kansas City, especially ever since Patrick Mahomes, things of that nature. I assume probably the Bills though don't as much. I feel like part of Josh Allen's fame has also been brought up even by potentially with these duels with Patrick Mahomes, because they've been so iconic and exciting, especially obviously the main game that happened in the playoffs a few years. But you don't really get that with Lamar. So I think the real question is like, what's at stake then? Is what's at stake is the media's perception of Lamar? Because I don't know. They don't really seem to care too much to really talk about Lamar. Is it the fans' perception? If you're a Baltimore Ravens fan, please let me know like what the general feeling around Lamar is. Like, are you guys getting anxious and angst, having this angst to be like, Lamar, deliver for us. Like, come on, we're paying you this money. You've been our quarterback for all these years. You're no longer this green, young rookie quarterback. Like, come on, you're a veteran now. Like, you got to deliver. You got to win. If you don't win this game, then by definition, it's a failure. I would really like to know your guys' perspective, because it doesn't seem like he gets any passes anymore, right? Jalen Hurts lost in the Super Bowl last year. He played unbelievable, and I don't think really no one in Philly blames Jalen Hurts. They just don't. But this season, Jalen Hurts didn't play that good, and now the blame's like, well, what about you, Jalen? And if the next year he doesn't play that good, it's like, well, Jalen, what's going on? And again, let's say Jalen Hurts within the next couple years makes it to another NFC Championship game and doesn't ball out, then yeah, people will start to say, can Jalen Hurts deliver a Super Bowl? And it's an understandable question. And so I think maybe that's where you get with Lamar. But I'm going to see who he puts on the next list, but I actually think there's another player who I kind of said, I don't know if you heard me, who has the most to lose technically.
Look, I'm fair. We're fair here on the Bud list. Brock Purdy.
Yeah, that's what it was going to be. Brock Purdy.
You've done just about everything that you could do. I mean, you went out there and balled against Dallas, against Philadelphia. You outplayed the prince that was promised, Trevor Lawrence, head-to-head by a mile. By a mile. You finished, you led the league in several significant passing categories. You are in the conversation for an MVP. Officially, you are in the conversation, not just with Brew. And you went out there and finally in inclement weather, you went ahead and got a comeback victory.
The rain stopped.
Still, you get no love from certain people. All right, so, Brock, what you got to do is don't even worry about the naysayers, the ne'er-do-wells. Don't even worry about them. All right, you just go out there and play. If you lose, they will pounce. If you win, they will sigh. No big deal. All right, just go out there and do your thing. We know you can do it, and Brock, I believe in you.
So I'll keep my Brock Purdy analysis quick real fast, because I've been talking about Purdy a lot lately, because he's really fun to talk about. But I agree with that. He is under duress because, as I was saying with Lamar and stuff, it's like, what do you have to lose? I think Brock Purdy, clearly, based off of my experience with interacting with all the Purdy and 49ers fans, they seem to love Purdy. So even if Purdy plays terrible and throws 2 interceptions and fumbles the ball and just gets rocked, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but I'm just saying if he did, it seems like most of the 49ers fans will still defend him and say, he's young, he had a bad game. Everyone has a bad game, and then that. So it seems like from the fan base, people love him, and he's got, plenty of, goodwill built up. But now if we're talking about pressure from the media and just general casual fans who are just, forming their opinion. So then I would say he absolutely has the most pressure, which is fascinating, because people are putting the pressure more on Purdy rather than, say, Lamar or an established figure like a Patrick Mahomes, right? Because you could make the argument that if Patrick Mahomes loses, then people could say, oh, what? You weren't good enough this year because your team wasn't good enough. And Therefore, the years that you won in the past were because you had a really good team, which therefore means you had theoretically less to do with your victories than people want to believe. Not to say that you weren't the main reason why, but theoretically, if you're the main reason why, then you should be able to do better regardless of who your team is. So it just opens up more of that argument. So theoretically, that could be pressure, but no one's really talking about that, especially because he's won multiple championships. So there is not that pressure from the fan base or even the media. But if he loses, and especially if he gets like smoked, that'll be a real conversation to have, and it's worth it to have, especially when people like Nick Ray pump someone like a Mahomes up so much. But with Purdy, he's still fighting the public narrative as to whether he belongs or not, right? Whether or not he is the reason why the 49ers are doing so well. Is he leading the 49ers or are the 49ers leading him? Whether the 49ers fans want to acknowledge that or agree with that, it doesn't really matter, because that is the general conversation. And it's obviously such a hot topic because everyone keeps talking about it. And like I said in my last video, like, it's fascinating. If anyone knows why, I would love to know why, because he's not divisive. He's not a jerk, right? Like Baker Mayfield, it makes sense that so many people didn't like him or that they wanted to poke holes in him, because he was a person that not everyone wanted to root for, right? No one really likes someone who's like really cocky before they've ever done anything, right? Someone who acts like they're going to take over the world before they've even entered into the world. Or when they call out, what Baker did, like calling out the physical therapy staff or whatever he did, which is just like such a low blow. I know personally how hard those dudes work, and relative to the amount of money that professional athletes are making, they're making peanuts and make a ton of sacrifice for nowhere near all the riches and glory that the athletes get. So to throw them under the bus is just, disgraceful, quite honestly. But I'll chalk it up to him just being young, immature, and, all up in his feelings. That's fine. But Brock Purdy's none of those things. So it's interesting that there's people that really push back. And I think it's because, my guess is when I was talking to someone in the comments before specifically about Patrick Mahomes, is that when people pump someone up so high, naturally people want to be like, well, whoa. And now it becomes this back and forth. And I think if people just said Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback or a pretty good quarterback, I think people would be fine with it. It's the fact that people are having the debate. Is he going to be the next Patrick Mahomes? Is he the next Tom Brady? Is he one of these other crazy stories where he was Mr. Irrelevant and now he's the best quarterback in the league? Would have the 49ers won the Super Bowl last year if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt? Because I think that also adds to his lore. Since he got hurt, and I stand by, the Eagles would have won that game. The Eagles were the better team, and the reason why Brock Purdy got hurt in the first place is because that offensive line in that game was out of control. The defensive line was out of control and was just headhunting. I mean, they were just attacking the quarterback, which is why every quarterback got knocked out. So whether it was Purdy or not, that was going to happen. I don't even care. Debate that all you want. It really doesn't even matter to me. And so that added to the lore of Brock Purdy, because it was like he could have maybe won the Super Bowl. He could have at least gotten to the Super Bowl, but he got hurt. So it's the what if, part of the Bo Jackson lore. What if he didn't get hurt? What could he have done? What if he only played baseball? What records would he have done? Would he have broken? Would he have won World Series, MVPs, home run derbies, whatever? And so when things are cut short, we see it as tragic, right? When people die young, it's tragic. It's what could have this person have done? Obviously, getting your arm injured is a lot less than dying or having a career, ending injury. But his season was cut short. And so I think that added to the lore of like, look how amazing and unbelievable this player is. And then he got hurt. And so now we're asking ourselves, well, what if? Or a lot of people are saying, not what if, this is what would have happened if he didn't get hurt. And then they got off to a hot start this season. And that continued this snowball effect of like the 49ers are a juggernaut and Brock Purdy is amazing. Yes, he was the last pick in the draft. Yes, no one knew who he was. Yes, now everyone knows who he is. And I think that's what continues, this narrative around Purdy.
Good ball list. I'm going to add Aiden Hutchinson and this Detroit Lions defense to this ball list. And the reason why I'm going to add this group is because when you look at the landscape of these last 4 teams that are remaining, there's only one team that has a glaring hole and weakness, and that is this defense. specifically their pass defense. And when we look into the numbers, the last 3 games of the season, and yes, I'm adding week 18 because the Lions decided, and Dan Campbell, who's the head coach, decided, I'm going to play my guys.
Yep, that's right.
And they played the Minnesota Vikings, and Nick Mullins was the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. And he threw for 396 yards. And when you look at these numbers, this is a problem. I understand you guys have overcome it. You won in all 3 of these games. But you can't think that you're going to go into 49er land, the Bay Area, and beat that team giving up this amount of yardage and explosive plays. When you look at these 2 playoff games, Matthew Stafford came into your house. Yeah. Obviously, Baker Mayfield. What happened? They threw for over 350 yards, basically, and they had a field day. Like, you're giving up too many big plays. And Aiden Hutchinson, why you're the face of this is because you're the most important player. You're the most valuable player on that defense. And what I understand to know is if you can get after the quarterback, you make it easy on your guys in the back end. I believe you can get after the quarterback. You've been doing a decent job, but you got to open it up for some other guys so that those guys in the back end can breathe a little bit, because when the game is on the line, you better believe that the offense, the opposing offense, is going to attack your secondary.
No, that's true. That's true. I look, their secondary is their weakness.
I don't think they're under duress because kind of what I've already said about fan bases and media. I don't think the media, if the Detroit Lions got blown away 42-0, okay, I don't think the media is going to blast Detroit and saying what a disaster this was. They've won 2 playoff games, okay? And they won 2 playoff games for the first time in, like, since the beginning of time. You know, I forget, it was like 40 plus years or just something outrageous, like literally since like the beginning of football. And I think the fans would be really appreciative. Even if they got blown away, they would be disappointed because I'm sure in Detroit, they're starting to really be like, oh my God, can we get to a Super Bowl? Can we win a Super Bowl? This is crazy. But I think the more realistic fans will, you know, I think even if the Detroit Lions lost, this would still be one of those situations where you still like clap for them when they get off the plane or whatever, right? And they would be like, thank you so much for an amazing season. We are so happy, right? Like I think they would, you know, be like, thank you for giving us something to root for. Thank you for giving us a home victory, you know, a home game to root for and cheer for, multiple home games. And I think they're just over the moon and excited. And I don't think the media is holding the Detroit Lions feet under fire. So I don't know then where is that pressure coming from then? The pressure has to come from somewhere. So the duress has to come from somewhere. So if it's not the fans and if it's not the media, well then like who is it? You know, the universe. So I don't really get that point personally. So that one I disagree with. I don't know if they're going to add anyone else. Does Nick Ray add anyone else?
I don't think it's quite as bad as the numbers suggest because I think they're so good against the run that you
Nick
have
Ray
to
will
throw
add
the ball. And so the stats, the yardage they give up is a little bloated. But yeah, I mean, if they stop the run, if they don't stop Brock Purdy from passing the ball, they're in trouble because I think they're going to be able to run it on them a little bit too.
I am putting Kyle Shanahan on the bug list. So a quick little history lesson about Kyle Shanahan, if you will. He was an offensive coordinator, great offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, offensive coordinator, Washington, Houston, and then Atlanta. Atlanta's where he really peaked, got the best season you could ever imagine out of Matt Ryan, a top 10 all-time scoring season up to that point in time by that Atlanta Falcons team. And then in the Super Bowl, with a large lead, kept pressing the gas. Now, it wasn't every single play, and if you go through the play-by-play, you can see they didn't have a ton of opportunities, but kept pressing the gas, most notably on that final drive, and Tom Brady, of course, snatched the Super Bowl from him. I believe that game fundamentally changed how Kyle Shanahan would call games in the playoffs as a head coach, where his weakness has been not only not pressing the gas, but holding on to the handbrake at every turn, not aggressive on fourth downs, terrified of the end of half situations. And you saw it again this past week when instead of trying to go score before the half, he was like, oh, we're in fringe field goal territory. Let's just make sure that our opponent doesn't get the ball. And it ended up going poorly for them then. Who is he up against this weekend? Dan Campbell, who has never met a fourth down decision he doesn't want to go for, a fake punt he doesn't want to flirt with, a two-point conversion, even if it's from the 27-yard line after multiple personal fouls. Screw it, we're going for it. And so I think the Niners have a decided advantage everywhere in this game except for in two positions, the quarterback and game management by the coach. They can overcome one of those. I don't know that they can overcome them both. So Kyle Shanahan needs to get back to what he once was as an offensive coordinator.
I think it's an interesting take. I don't have a ton to say on with regards to that, kind of because it's going to be a similar take. I don't get the sense that the fans of the 49ers, if Shanahan loses, they're going to hold his feet to the fire. And I don't think the media would hold Kyle Shanahan's feet to the fire, because all I ever hear is how much of an offensive coach, how much of a guru, offensive guru Shanahan is. I know on more recent years, more recent time, more notably these last couple seasons, people are now starting to highlight that he struggles to come from behind, and that his offense is more, his teams are more designed around having the lead than, getting the lead from behind and stuff like that, which is definitely, worthy criticism, but it just doesn't seem to be at the forefront of what people have to say. But it is interesting, because if the 49ers get rocked and Brock Purdy doesn't play well, do they blame Kyle Shanahan or do they blame Brock Purdy? It seems to me right now, actually, more people like Brock Purdy than anyone on the 49ers. He seems to have become, the number one player. I'd love to see the jersey sales for that one. But what do you all think? What do you think of this list? Let me know in the comments below. Would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this one. So please let me know. And please don't forget to subscribe. As I said, we are building an amazing community here, and it's turning into something truly special, and I'd love to see you part of it. And please don't forget to subscribe, as I already just said subscribe. I'm saying please don't forget to give a thumbs up, as it would really help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.